Good morning, good evening, good day, and welcome to Dramabuds. I'm Francine, I really love K-dramas, and I'm going to spend as much time as I want talking about them. Welcome to my podcast. So, hello everyone. On today's episode, we're going to discuss the greatest homework I have ever had to do in my life. Um, little background on me again. I'm currently taking a class on K-dramas. Yes. I was required to watch K-dramas. I'm being graded on my ability to talk about K-dramas. It's amazing. I mean, okay, there were like 25 or 30 slots for a class, and there were 150 or so people lined up for it. And I got it on the first round of pre-enlistment. I have to say, if there are miracles, this was a miracle. And I cannot believe I got into this class, and it's the best thing. It's the best thing I've had to do in my college life, being required to watch K-dramas. I mean, okay, we were required to watch Crash Landing on You, Chicago Typewriter, and our show for today, Misaeng. Chloe, I watched it, I binged it 2 days before the finale, and then I caught up to the last episode. It was great. Chicago Typewriter, I watched it a few months ago, very slowly, but I wasn't super into it. And then Misaeng came. And, okay, disclaimer, if you could not tell by my excitement, this is my favorite K-drama of all time. I would put it at a close second to Hospital Playlist maybe, but I mean, it changes every day, the two of them. That's how much I love both of these shows. But for today, Misaeng is my favorite K-drama of all time. And I don't think it'll be easy to get to that level anyway, between Hospital Playlist and Misaeng. So let's just declare those two as my top two for forever. For until I find another show that reaches their level for me. Anyway, Misaeng is great. Misaeng is great. I love the show. It introduced me to some of my favorite actors now, which we will thoroughly discuss later. Don't worry. And it kind of gave me a standard now of what exactly am I looking for in a K-drama? How come I'm able to tolerate this kind of K-drama and even love it? Meanwhile, I can't really stand or can't continue watching other types of shows. For me, I think Misaeng is the epitome of everything I'm looking for in a K-drama. And man, I'm so excited. I can't believe I started a podcast just so I could talk about this K-drama that I love so much. So much like all of my other favorite K-dramas, this is a very character-driven show. I mean, I really could not tell you what the plot is without discussing the characters first. The plot is, they all work in an office together. They deal with office politics and their own individual journeys and dramas and struggles and insecurities within themselves or within their teams. So, I mean, if we stopped at that description, there's nothing much else to say, but the characters are so rich, they're so detailed, so fleshed out, and their journeys really have their own arcs. But, we'll get into it. Well, let's just start with my favorite male protagonist of all time, Mr. Jangure himself, played by Im Shi-wan. Now, Jangure used to be a Baduk player since he was a child. Baduk is this traditional Korean game. It's basically chess, but way more complex, apparently. And though he was a pretty successful Baduk player, when his father died, he had to start working to help his mother make a living. And so, with a lot of odd jobs and part-time work, he couldn't really focus on studying Baduk. So although he was successful at the start and he's very smart, he was unable to make it to the professional level of Baduk playing. And so, he had to keep working odd jobs. He couldn't really find anywhere permanent to work because he was just a high school graduate and only got a GED. Until his mother found a connection that got him an internship in One International. And as he started working there, Jangkore faced a lot of, say, discrimination and bullying because of his background or lack thereof. Everyone else there, they were college graduates, they've had so much experience, a lot of internships, different language, different skills, competencies, and he had a GED and nothing else, really. He wouldn't really talk about his baduk past. And, you know, he came in knowing nothing and really had to depend on like the very few people who were nice to him, like An Yung Yi, his co-intern, and his manager Kim Dong Shik. And one of the most painful incidents in this show was in the very first episode, where all the male interns were sent to this warehouse of seafood that was going to be processed for something, I don't know, and then they had to look for pieces of octopus in drums of squid, because the company isn't supposed to be selling octopus, but sometimes they mix it in because they think it can't be caught by the suppliers or the shipment people. I don't know, but essentially they were asked to dig into drums of squid and octopus to look for octopus. And just earlier in that episode, his mother, had bought him a new suit because he came into work on his very first day, looking like a lost child in that office in his father's old suit that didn't fit him right. And his mother spent a lot of their money just to buy him a good looking suit, and then brought it to him in the office and changed into it. And then just later on that day, they were sent to a warehouse full of stinky seafood. And the other interns were able to get like protective gear or something to cover their clothes up, but they lacked the equipment. And then there was no one who wanted to partner with him in each of the container trucks, so he had to go through all of those drums alone. And you were watching him open up this stinky drums of seafood and sink his hand and his arms into it, like knowing that his mother paid for that suit just that day. And then at the end of it, apparently the company admitted that, yeah, they were putting octopus in their squid, and all the other interns could stop looking now. They could just go home, go back to the office, take a shower, go to the sauna and whatever. But the interns, the co-interns who were kind of bullying him or looking down on him, didn't tell him that it was time to go home, and he didn't hear that they were all gone. And so he just kept working and working. And then later that day, the floor manager in the factory saw him still working almost while everyone had gone home hours earlier. And we're like, what are you doing here? Everyone went home already. We recalled everyone. We admitted that we were wrong. And so, Jangkore had to come home to a stinky suit. And his boss had treated all the other interns because, of course, they did their team a favor. And Jangkore just came in there and everyone was just laughing at him and saying, oh, it's just hazing. Don't worry about it, And at that moment, instead of, going home or even getting mad, like, Jangkore, get mad at these people. They're being awful. I mean, you're not stupid enough to think this is normal treatment in the workplace. But instead, he just said, his boss saw him and said, what are you doing? You should go home. And Jangkore said, no, I still have work to do. I still have work to do in the office. And his boss said, no, you don't have to do that anymore. And Jangkore said, no, I'll finish what I started. And so he stayed up all night in the office, like rearranging these files that his boss, Osang Shik, told him to rearrange. And it was just, I can't fully describe how sad it was to watch someone struggle so much and still get treated like crap, honestly. Jangkore deals with a lot of that discrimination and condescension from the people around him, and yet you still see him working so hard because of really his great relationship with his boss, Oh Sang-shik, who kind of motivates him and pushes him to keep going. But not in the preachy, perfect, kind, benevolent mentor way, but in like tough love that's filled with a lot of affection, really. And now we go on to one of my favorite characters in the show, his manager, Oh Sang-shik, played by Lee Sung-min. So Oh Sang-shik is he's a gruff man, but he's actually very warm. Like I think tough love. Tough love is the perfect way to describe how he treats Jangre and everyone in his team. That he's, he's a bit rough around the edges, but you really see how he cares for the people who he works with. And the thing is that Oh Sang-shik doesn't participate much in office politics. Like, he doesn't suck up to his seniors. He really just works hard and takes difficult projects for the sake of taking difficult projects, to challenge himself as a salesman or to push his team. But it's not so that he can get a promotion, or that his subordinates can get a promotion, or so he can suck up to the director or to the president or to his department head. It's really just the sake of doing work for the sake of doing good work there. And so because he doesn't participate in office politics, he often becomes the victim of it, because he has no one who's really on his side whenever conflict starts rising. And so despite the fact that there is really no benefit in working with Mr. O, because you're not going to get good connections out of it, he inspires a lot of loyalty from his subordinates, from Jangre, from Kim Dong-shik, played by Kim De-myung, and what's his name? Park Hae-jun, who plays Chon Kwan-woong, who also works in Sales Team 3. That's their team. So, initially, Mr. O did not like Jangre because Gre came from a distant connection, right? And no one really knew how he got in, who he was connected to, but he got in one international's internship program through a connection. And Oh Sang-shik doesn't like those people because he thinks that they didn't work for what they got. But, after really challenging Gre and, kind of mistreating him at some points, he saw how Jangre put in the quality and the quantity of effort that, he needs to make up for that deficiency, that lack, or the thing that Oh Sang-shik really dislikes about him. And, Jangre just worked so hard that he just warmed up to him. And like Mr. O being Mr. O, his gruff but warm self, he low-key helps Jangre by giving him opportunities to establish himself and show that he's worthy of being here. That Jangre is a good worker and he's smart, and people shouldn't look down on him just because he doesn't have a college degree. And he especially helps Jangre because after the internship, while all the other 3 interns were hired as full-time workers, Jangre was just a contractual worker. And so, he needed all the opportunities he could get to really prove himself as a good worker, even if it's not a permanent job. Just do your best with whatever time you have left here in the company. For me, they are the central relationship because though there are 4 protagonists, this is something I learned in my K-drama class. Apparently, Jangre wasn't the only protagonist. All the 4 new hires were the protagonists. But Jangre is kind of the initiator among them, who's at the center of a lot of the conflict, and sometimes his conflict kind of pushes the conflicts of the other protagonists as well. And his relationship with Mr. O is just, it really blossoms into like a mentor-mentee relationship where, Oh Sang-shik has some trauma about someone that his protege in the past who met like a really dark end, and because of, office politics and everything, he has some fears over getting too attached to someone, to a temp worker again. But, he can't help but help Jangre because he still wants Jangre to succeed. And I think that's just a beautiful relationship that's highlighted throughout the entire show. Now, the other three protagonists are Janggare's co-interns that were hired alongside him, except, they were hired as full-time workers and Janggare was contractual temp worker. First one is the one person who was actually nice to Janggare from the very beginning, which is An Yong-yi, played by Kang Sora. So, she is a very competent, very experienced worker. And despite how good she is, actually, because of how good she is, she was placed in kind of, the star team of their department. She's in the resources team. However, it's a very male-dominated team, especially with their very sexist department head who kind of just lets that, culture grow. And so even if she's so good at what she does, she constantly had to face sexism and misogyny and her male bosses looking down on her and not letting her do any work because they don't trust a woman to be able to do it. And so she kind of reflects the reality that women face in the workplace. That even if, women are making strides and making names for themselves and are able to seek higher positions and do well in it, they will always face some sort of discrimination for as long as, this gender inequality is in place in the workplace. And so her approach to it was sticking it out. Like if they're going to be unfair and ridiculous to me, I'm just going to stick it out. And sure, I will take your coffee and get your food and do your laundry or whatever. Like, whatever. Treat me as your slave or something. But I'm going to stay here and I'm not going to quit or give up just because you won't give me a chance. And she sticks it out until even her team members realize that, we're being kind of ridiculous because she is a good worker every time we give her a chance. And, okay, like, I don't completely like that approach or how that played out because it's kind of optimistic. Like, we're kind of just banking on maybe her team members aren't completely awful people. Like, maybe they realize that she's a great worker and that they shouldn't be unfair to her. But, in the real world, can we really hope that people are always going to come to that realization on their own? I don't know. I mean, I love Yong-yi. I love her journey. But that was something that I couldn't fully grasp or wouldn't really agree with. So, eventually, her team warmed up to her and, they realized Yong-yi is a great person and she's a great worker and we shouldn't be wasting her potential on just menial tasks and constantly demeaning her. And even if their department head, Mr. Ma, was very sexist and would refuse to change, he was really just blatantly sexist to her. Eventually, it was her team members and her bosses who were defending her from him. And I think that was a really nice development of their relationship and their dynamic as a team. Another struggle that Yong-yi faced was with her father. He's always, starting new businesses. He's always in debt. And this caused her to leave her old job because eventually her father started asking for money from her old boss, from her mentor, who she was so close to. And, just the shame of it all that caused her to leave and to start again in a new company. And so, well, to be honest, or based on my recollection, there wasn't really any resolution to this. Like, her father didn't magically become a decent man who left her alone. But I think her growth came when she started opening up to Jang Baeki, another one of their co-interns, who I will speak about shortly. Because Yong-yi has this kind of perfect, unflappable image. She's a strong female character who's very competent and she can stand up for herself. And she was kind of holding on to that. She was very reserved about that. But by admitting that she had this flaw or this problem in her life and opening up to others, I think that's another strength. Like being vulnerable and opening up to others is something that's difficult to do. But when you're able to do it, it really relieves this burden, that she's not a perfect character, but but she continues to stay strong. So I think that makes her an even stronger female character. Next, just a disclaimer, this will get rambly because we have now approached the greatest, my favorite, the love of my life, Mr. Jang Baeki himself, played by Kang Hanul, the actual love of my life. I mentioned that getting this class was a miracle. I would like to now say that getting this K-drama class was not only a miracle, it was a blessing. Because I discovered Kang Hanul through this show. And now, I will never be the same person. Because I love him so much. I mean, if you follow me on like Twitter or Instagram or something, you would know I'm obsessed with this guy. He's an amazing actor. And I'll shut up. I'll stop talking about him. So Jang Baeki, played by Kang Hanul, is this really smart, competent graduate of a prestigious university or whatever. And at the start, he was kind of an ass. I mean, he was low-key condescending to Jangere. But he wasn't outright a bully. He wasn't outright discriminating against him, unlike his peers from his university who also came in as interns. He's more of an enabler. Like, he lets them do whatever they want, whatever mean things they want to do to Jangere, but he personally doesn't participate in it, so you can't really call him out because he's not doing anything wrong. And that's why he's a really annoying character at the start. However, I think Baeki's turning point as a character came when he was placed in a team that he didn't want to be in. As an intern, he was in the resources team, which I mentioned earlier is like the star team, like their work is very flashy and important, and they get big deals and stuff. And as an employee, he was placed in the steel team, which they mostly just check up on previous contracts and make sure people are following regulations and such. I don't know. I don't understand their business. But something like that, where it's more of behind-the-scenes work. And so what's worse is that he was placed in a team he didn't want, and then his boss wouldn't give him any work. And whenever he asked why, his boss would say, I think you lack training. And Jang Baeki doesn't understand. What do you mean I lack training? I mean, I'm a graduate from whatever prestigious university. I'm extremely competent. I'm one of the 4 people in that whole batch of interns that was chosen to work here. What do you mean I lack training? I'm a hotshot. And, because of that mindset, he eventually actually almost resigned from his job. But then he realized that he needed to give it just some time. Like, his manager gave him like a little bone, just like a little bit of training, a little work to do. And he realized, maybe I do lack training. Maybe I don't know everything. And maybe I need time to still learn before I'm able to, do the big projects that I thought I was capable of doing. And so when he gave it time, he stayed in the job and he started, becoming more humble, I guess, as a person in general. This is when he kind of grew as a character. And this amazing moment in his relationship with Jangore, who, he continually looked down on. And he didn't just look down on Jangore. He was also a bit jealous of him. Because, here Jang Baeki was, big hotshot, competent graduate from a university, placed in a team he didn't want, doing nothing in that team. Meanwhile, Jangore, who has nothing and came from nothing, is getting these big deals and helping his team out so much. And you can see his close relationship with Sales Team 3. Meanwhile, Jang Baeki can't even look his boss in the eyes. So Jangore was sent by Mr. O to, sell something. Here's some money. Go buy something, go sell all of it, and give me the money at the end of the day. And Jang Baeki's manager was like, hey, you join him so you can learn something too. And, Jang Baeki was super resistant to it and everything. But, when he tried to use his connections or whatever, he failed. And then when he saw Jangere approaching the Badok Academy or something, he eventually found out that Jangere had this past as a Badok player, that he was actually a very smart person, and life just happened to not make him successful in that old path. And so at the end of that day, Jangre was about to go home after finishing his report on that assignment. And then Jang Becky was still there. And Becky said, we're not on the same level, but I'll see you tomorrow. I mean, not exactly like that, but something like that. And that's in my interpretation, it's kind of like, yeah, we're not on the same level. The time we spent in our lives is not the same. I studied and, Jangre doesn't know that Becky knows about his Badok past, but you did whatever you did in your life. And, it's not the same. We're not the same, or not on the same level. But you still deserve to be here, And I'll see you tomorrow at work. Something like that. I think you have to watch the episode. It was a great episode among the many great episodes of this show. But just in that one statement, like, Becky was able to show that, he accepts Jangre now. He understands why Gre deserves to be here. And now they can actually start being friends. Right? And, Jang Becky has the slowest growth, honestly, in this entire show. It took him like 15 episodes, I think 15 or 16 episodes before that moment happened. And he finally started becoming, a decent, nice, adorable, beautiful human being. And so his growth is really all about just being humble and letting go of your pride and your ego. And also having a little bit of empathy. Like, you don't know everyone's stories the same way people don't know your story. And so it's difficult to just judge them based on what little you know about them. Like, don't judge someone by their background, I guess, or what you know of their background. Try to see how they are in wherever they are. I don't know, something like that. I think Jang Becky is a very relatable character for me. I mean, relatable character for a lot of people. We have our egos, we have our pride, but if you put that down just for a moment and look around you, you'll see that maybe the people you look down on have actually more to bring to the table than you do. And whatever, it's a good reflection, good thing to reflect on when you're thinking about, yourself and your life and your pride. And now the last member of the 4 new hires is Han Seok-yul, played by Byun Yo-han. So, Seok-yul is this charismatic and kind of cunning, but he's a very good-natured person about it. He's kind of the comedic relief of the show. Yeah, but he also, of course, has his own journey, because that's what this show is all about. Characters with amazing individual journeys. So Seok-yul comes from a blue-collar family, and he prefers working in the factories because he understands their struggles and their plight. But he chose to have a white-collar job, so he has to adjust to this new setting. But he is the one who constantly reminds people that, just because you're the ones in the offices doesn't mean you're higher than the ones in the factories. Like, both sides of the business do their job to keep the company alive and keep it growing. So you can't just look down on people because they're in a different setting from you. And that really manifested in his internship presentation with Jangre, where it was very messy, actually. Episode 4, very funny, very embarrassing, very messy, very Misaeng. I love the show. Okay, so basically, Seok-yul, being the extremely charismatic, excellent speaker that he decided to present for him and Jangre, who is a very awkward, very bad at speaking person. He was not going to survive in that presentation. But Seok-yul forgot to take his anxiety meds, and so he really fumbled up in the presentation. But it was basically, I forgot the exact topic, but it was talking a lot about the processes within the factories, which Seok-yul knows a lot about. And so, when he started fumbling and stuttering, he couldn't keep going. Jangores took over for him, and because my poor baby boy has no experience in anything, he was just honestly rambling and telling like vague stories of how it would be in the factories. But when Jangores started getting grilled by the panelists, it was Sokyul who stepped in again and was able to revive and resuscitate their presentation by bringing in his personal experiences from working in the factories. And I think that really set him apart from all the other interns who, only knew their world within the office. And then when he got hired, despite all their fumbling around in their presentations with each other, when he got hired, Sokyul's new struggle came with his boss, his manager, who was constantly taking advantage of him and taking credit for his work. And so, Sokyul is a funny guy and he'll fight back, actually. He fought back and tried to resist it and even posted something on the company message boards talking about his boss who was, always credit grabbing and whatever. And instead of people attacking his manager, people started attacking him for being this ungrateful brat of a new hire that must have been such a hassle to deal with for his boss. And so eventually this made Sokyul lose his spirit and lose his energy and all. And I didn't even notice that there was a time skip in this show, or a subtle time skip in this show where everyone's hairstyles had changed and Sokyul was now this completely different drab person. Instead of his weird shirt and tie combinations and his ugly middle parted hair, he just became, a regular office worker with no life in his eyes. And at this point, the 4 new hires or employees now, they were kind of getting close already. And really losing Sokyul's energy and his weirdness and all. It's kind of this blow that they didn't expect. They didn't think, he was such a, the life of the group. And now he was a completely different person. But eventually, he realized that his weirdness, his weird clothes, and his attitude about everything is what makes him different from the drabness and the boring people around him in the office. And he kind of went back to being himself. And I think Sokyul's growth is really about adjusting to where you are, but not really losing touch of who you are. Of course, you have to adjust to where you're working and who you're working with. But if you totally adjust and lose sight of what makes you special, what makes you unique, and what makes you yourself, then that doesn't make you any different from them. And it was really nice when it was Yoongi and Jangare who said that, they missed when Sokyul was his old self. And it's it's nice to be appreciated for who you are and how you are. Even if Sokyul was kind of annoying at some points. But, just there, I've said a lot. It's just about adjusting, but not losing yourself. And I like that about Sokyul's character. So those are the 4 protagonists of the show plus Mr. O. And, that's just something amazing about this show that I could honestly just keep going on about it because the characters are so individually fleshed out. Even the supporting characters, even their managers or their co-workers or their department heads and their dynamics with each other, it's all so fleshed out. And each character, maybe they don't have their own journey, but the way they contribute to the protagonist's journey is also really unique and heartfelt. For me though, the star of the show is of course Jangare, and his journey is really, I don't know, he is my favorite male protagonist of all time because his journey is pretty unique. As I mentioned in my previous podcast episode about Chesonga, his story is that he starts out at the bottom, and no matter how hard he tries, even if he is successful at some points and people do support him and see his value, he still did not make it as a regular employee in One International. Spoiler alert, he doesn't become regularized no matter how hard he tries, no matter how much other people even campaign for him. Because sometimes that's that's just how the world is. I mean, I remember that moment in the final episode. Everyone was building up to it. Everyone, even Jang Becky was compiling a list of all the projects and how Janggore contributed to all of them. And everyone was working hard to help Janggore become regularized at the end of his contract. And then it was Miss Sun, another team leader, who was in the meeting that day. And, as she was walking towards Janggare's seat, everyone was looking at her. Everyone was waiting for what she would say. And then she didn't say anything. And it stretched out for how many more seconds? Over a minute of just silence and looking at Janggare with, like, was it pity or sorry, feeling sorry, or being sorry? Being apologetic. And in any other K-drama, they would just stretch out this moment, this tense moment for as long as they want, and then, oh, surprise, actually you're a regular employee now, yay. But in Misaeng, like, as the silence kept growing longer and longer and longer, that's when it started sinking in that, oh, he really didn't make it. There really was no triumph to this. And that's so sad. That's miserable. That's such a miserable thing to do to a character, honestly. But I think that's what sets Janggore apart from every other protagonist out there. That, once again, someone who started out at the bottom and tried their best but didn't come out on top. And the thing is, in the ending, spoiler alert, Mr. O also had to leave the company because of office politics. But a lot of things happened. Just watch the show. But, he had to leave the company and establish his own company with his previous boss. And he ended up hiring Janggore again. And that's the ending, that he, Janggore, and Kim Dong-shik, the other man in their team, were working in this small company together, and they were happy with that. Like, so what if they weren't working in the big One International empire anymore? They were starting from the bottom, but they were doing it together. And I think that's also another important lesson, like, sometimes you fail, or sometimes you can't get the ending that you want. But once again, you can still, find success somewhere else. And it's important to have good relationships with people, or to meet the right people, to follow the right people, those who really want the best for you and want to continue walking this path with you. And so that's why I really love Janggare's relationship with Mr. O, because at the end, the payoff of everything that they've gone through was kind of worth it, in a low-key way, in a not a gigantic celebration, K-drama cheesy celebration way. It was understated, but it was pretty satisfying. Bittersweet, but satisfying. And also another thing I loved about Janggore was actually the start of his story. That he really didn't succeed in Baduk. Because you know how, like, let's say in music or something, someone wants, a teen wants to pursue music, but because they're poor, they can't. So they just go for settling with a quote-unquote normal life. But they still have this secret passion for it that they're waiting to pursue someday, maybe. And that's kind of like a plan B for them, or another option in life, because they were never able to pursue it. But for Janggore, he pursued it, and he failed. And so he's going into the corporate life. He had to go into this world because he failed. Right? And there is no plan B. He's not, maybe one day my love for Baduk or an opportunity will arise where I can succeed in that field again. It's really not gonna happen. And so there is no plan B. All he has is the corporate life. For him, this is the only way to succeed now. And that's tough. That's rough, buddy. That's really hard to watch and to grasp and to accept. But, that's why you understand why he's working so hard. He's working so hard because this is the only chance he has now. Like, he was given this chance, he had to admit that he didn't really work for it. Like, he got in through a connection, and that's why he has to work extra, extra hard to deserve being here. And then, spoiler alert, he didn't. That's really what sucks about this show. I mean, it doesn't suck. I actually love that about the show, that it ended the way it did. Because, once again, another life lesson. Like, a failure is not the end of the world. And Jangore really shows that. And lastly, the thing that really set Jangre apart from other protagonists out there is Im Shi-won's portrayal of him. Like, Im Shi-won is the perfect actor for this role. I mean, this is one of his first major roles, right? And he just did so well. Like, the way he portrayed, Jangre's complex emotions. Like, instead of just seeming, pathetic and sad and whatever, like, Jangre he is a fighter. Somehow, he's still fighting back. He's still trying his best. He's earnest about it, but he's not totally naive. And I don't know. I think Shiwon's height really helps. Like, I think if you cast someone, taller and more charming and charismatic and whatever, a Lee Min-ho type or a Park Seo-joon type, I don't know. If you cast that kind of person in Janggere's role, you wouldn't feel this much, like, pity for him. Do I feel pity for him? Something like that. But in general, like, Im Shi-won's portrayal just really captured, like, all the little emotions in his face. And I think what most struck me the most was, like, whenever you could see that Jangere was, grateful, was feeling gratitude for people. Though he just teared up so slightly and, his eyes were so wide. And I mean, I could really just keep describing, Im Shi-won's face, but you could just watch the show. I would highly recommend you watch the show just to see how great of an actor Im Shi-won actually is. And because of this, I'm now actually supporting him. I am watching his movies now and maybe some of his dramas, but he doesn't have a lot. But, for me, Im Shi-won is one of the best idol actors out there. Not just because of Misaeng. Like, I thought he would be stuck in this level of acting, but he's actually really excellent elsewhere. So go support my boy. He's amazing. Another thing I love about this show is how some episodes it's kind of episodic at some points at the beginning of the show. Like, the conflicts and the plot lines started and ended within one episode. And so, there was always this satisfying feeling at the end of an episode. And then there were some, like, story arcs that lasted 3 or 4 episodes where it's really actually very engaging. And, like, I would watch this show really slowly, like 1 episode every few days because I wasn't catching up to the class yet. But then when there were, like, episode arcs where things were really happening, like, wow, I could not stop watching for 3, 4, 5 episodes at a time. It's a show that, like, plays up how boring it is at times. Like, it's a slice of life show, there are so many little moments that you would think, is this even necessary to get the story going? But then the story is really about how the characters live their daily lives in the office and their daily struggles there. So every little moment adds something to their characters. I remember this episode 16, I think, where Han Suk-yeol's manager said something about Mr. O because he doesn't participate in office politics, and so there's no benefit to working with him. And then Dong-shik, Gere's manager, the one working under Mr. O, when they were all drinking together because they were in the same batch, they came into the company around the same time. They all were close by that point. He got super drunk and he started, like, swearing and screaming and almost, like, punching Sokyo's manager because, to him, like, how dare you say anything about my manager? I work hard because of him. He has brought me so much as my boss, and, like, how dare you say anything about him? What do you know? And I think that was just, like, a small funny moment where you realize, oh, so this is how Mr. O inspires loyalty from his team. That they really see the value of just working hard and doing good work, even if we don't get any, like, office political benefits from it. Like, we just do good work And that's it. I don't know. I can't really explain it so well because I really love that scene. Maybe you should watch the show. It's kind of amazing. There's a lot more. There are a lot more little moments that add up to, those big explosive moments that are just really satisfying and tell you so much about the characters and their relationships with one another. There, I mentioned the cast, the other members, the other characters that I didn't go into detail anymore. But it's a huge cast. There are actually a lot of people here, but they're all great. Like, they all have like their little moments to shine. Maybe one episode, a little storyline here, and then they go back to the background. But, they're all people. Really, these are people you will meet in real life. I haven't met them because I don't work in an office, but I know they exist out there, and I think that's why this show is a big hit, because a lot of people could see themselves in the characters. Maybe not the main characters, but the supporting characters, the people who have their own stories but don't really stand out or weren't made to stand out in the show. And what else? What else do I love about this show? I love the OST. Oh, the original soundtrack for the show is amazing. It's so good. Unlike other K-dramas where they have like a bunch of songs that they release every episode, Misaeng only had like 5 or 6 songs, like songs with singers and all, but each song fit the show perfectly. Like, you can tell that when this song is playing, okay, we're gonna get an emotional moment. When this song is playing, it's finally gonna be a little triumph for our boy Jangre, or the show is ending, something like that. It's honestly so good, and it really captures like the kind of dreariness, the bleakness of life, and yet there's this like twinge of hopefulness and optimism that life can get better, and we just have to keep living for tomorrow. Tomorrow is the title of the main song of the show that I have heard countless times, but I am still not sick of it. And every time I hear it, I get sad because I remember how sad this show made me, how sad and happy. And also just watch the show. Just watch the show, enjoy the songs, and then listen to the soundtrack and be sad after. Okay. I think another thing I love about this show are the little life lessons that they teach, the themes. I remember this one from episode 9 or 10 or something. I don't know. But it was the idea that everyone has their own baduk game. Like, everyone has something that matters to them, Like, you'd think, okay, life in an office, the little things that happen here, do they really matter in the grand scheme of things? Will getting this deal or not getting this deal or getting promoted, will this really change the course of history or whatever? Like, if you always think in the grand scheme of things, you'll think your life is irrelevant and all your problems are worthless. But everyone has their own badok game. Everyone has their own agenda. Everyone is living for something. Everyone has their own definition of success or failure, and everyone has something that matters to them, while to others it's such a little thing. And I think that's just such a great lesson on, I guess, empathy. I think it's empathy. Just to understand that, we're all living our own lives and we're all trying to succeed in our own ways. And we just have to understand each other, and they can't really force others to see something as unimportant or to value something when when they don't value it at all. And the overall journey of this show is how we can't always succeed, but we can still find our path. And what matters is the relationships. Is the relationship that we develop with others, and how that kind of completes our life in a way. But now that we've mentioned the completeness of life, Misaeng is actually a badok term that means an incomplete life. And that is the encompassing theme concept of the entire show. How, sometimes you get what you want, but you have to lose something to get there. And so, would you say that your life is complete? Would you say that your life is perfect? No. Sometimes you don't get what you initially wanted, but it's something different. Something that may be better or maybe not as good, but you can keep living because of it. And you will always look at that failure or that opportunity that you didn't get and think, my life is incomplete, but it's still worth living. Like Misaeng is an incomplete life. It's perfect. To me, it's really a perfect description of how life really is for most people. And, other K-dramas would give you big triumphant moments, an underdog story, a success story. And Misaeng gave me bitter, sweet memories of a show that I really do love, but a show that I cannot rewatch. I could not rewatch it when I first finished it because I was just too sad about everything that happened. Even if Jangore, got a job and worked with the people that really mattered to him and were so kind to him, I still felt bittersweet about it because, he didn't get his big break in One International. But so his life is, incomplete in some ways. But it's still worth living and it's still worth, appreciating the little victories we have and continuing to fight the good fight, whatever that is for each of us. So there, that's Misaeng. That's why I love this show so much. I've said so much about it. It's really that good. I'm currently watching My Mister, which is a K-drama by the same director. And the vibes are so similar. And it's also equally sad. It's also very, very sad. But I'm enjoying it so much. And I hope one day when I finish it, I think I will love it. I'm pretty sure I will also love it. So maybe we'll talk about that someday. But there, I hope this gave you an idea of what Misaeng is about. And for those who know me and see me talk about this drama all the time, this is why I have given you a how many minute podcast talking about this show. So maybe I'll shut up now. But if you have the time, if you have the energy and the mental headspace to do it, go watch this show. It's amazing, and I don't know anyone who didn't enjoy it. So maybe try it out. It's pretty amazing, and it'll really kind of change your perspective on life. So thank you for listening to today's podcast. I hope to see you soon.